Okay, so I'm gonna be going over how to CAD a toy box, which is what we went over on Thursday, October 7th. So if you weren't able to make that meeting, or if you're just in the future, you wanna relearn or just make sure you know all the steps, this is basically for that. So first of all, we have all our planes, and what we wanna do is make a sketch. So click sketch, click our plane to be top. And now what we're gonna have to do, first of all, is make our box and just like all the aspects. So we're gonna have four shapes. We're gonna have a square, a right triangle, an octagon, and a crescent moon. So first of all, let's use the center point rectangle. Let's do this. Dimension, which shortcut D, and then you can set the values equal. So that way, that's like a really fast, like really simple way. You can just set these equal since you already defined these lengths. Then if you just set them equal to the lines that aren't defined, then they'll basically always become the ones that are already defined. And then another really quick trick you can do is you can just do offset, and you'll click all the lines you have here. You can pull them out a bit. Doesn't really matter. Look, then now you can adjust the offset of your outer edge. So basically, this is going to be like a box, right? This is the bottom, and these are the walls that we're going to pull out, because that's what extrude does. It just makes it into a 3D, because our sketch is 2D, but once we extrude, it becomes a 3D model. So now we have our box and our outline. Let's go on with making our shapes. So really simple. Start with the easiest, square. Doesn't really matter, these don't have to be equal, because you're going to dimension it. So just make that 1.5. And next up, we can set them equal. There we go. So notice how it lengthened. Right now it's blue, because it's not really, I can really move this anywhere. I can like, see, I can just move it left, I can move it right. Like it's not really dimensioned to anything. So let's fix that. Now, let's draw some lines. And like I really put them down randomly. All I have to do is connect to the outer line and touch these sides. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make another one right here actually. So I want to make sure that this square is going to be in the center of this quadrant of the box. And how I can do that is essentially, boop, I have these three lengths, and they're just going to tell me how far away from the walls of the quadrant they're going to be. And I don't need one on here, because if this one is correct, then this one will be right as well. So all I'm going to do is set all of these lines equal to each other. So that way, they're close with one another. And another thing I want to do, as you can tell, this one's still blue, meaning something's still not defined. And clearly, it's still not, if you're looking a bit closely, you can tell that this isn't on the midpoint. This isn't actually on the middle. So I'm going to click this point, and then use that. That's our midpoint tool. That'll allow us to use this point and make sure it's on the middle, the center point of this line. So now we have this square, and it's in the center of this quadrant, which is perfect. But the thing with these lines are, we're not going to extrude them. They're going to make more like quadrants, and it's going to be more hard to click when you extrude. So let's just construction, and we can press Q, turn them into construction lines, and Q, then Q. Boom. And now we have our first shape. So next up, let's go with our triangle. Triangle. And notice when you have this line going around, if you want it to be at any like 0 degrees, 9 degrees, 180, or 270, there'll be this dashed line that it will snap onto. So we can just use that as a guide right now. So it has the snaps too, over here, here. And the dimensions don't matter right now, we'll always dimension them right after we draw them. And what I'm going to do is I want to make sure that this triangle is like generally in the middle as well. So I'm going to put this point on here. And then I'm going to make that point the midpoint. There we go. It's the center. And I also need to make sure that this is a right angle. And right angle triangle, let's just make it a 30, 60, 90 triangle. If any of you take trig, probably know what that is. And then let's define this side, 1 inch. Let's define how far it is from here. Like 0.75 is good. And then what I want, because we already have this point here, I know this point is in the center. Well, I can just use the horizontal, which means they'll have the same x value. So if you drew a straight line, both these points would be on a straight line. That's the same idea with the vertical. If you click vertical, then these two are technically vertical. If you drew a line through it, then both these points would be on it. So horizontal, boom. See? Now all this is as I mentioned. Awesome. So now we have 2 of our shapes. So let's go on to our third shape, the crescent. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to draw another line here that we can use to help ensure that this crescent is going to be in the center here. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to construction these lines, because we're not actually going to, these aren't going to jut out on their own. They're kind of just there to help us make some structures. I just unconstructed them. There we go. And let's make our crescent. So to use our crescent, we have a 3-point arc, which basically is like any sort of a part of a circle, as you can tell, like that. But that's not exactly the point we wanted. So let's just, and then boop, and then do this. And notice it's like not centered. It's kind of small. So I'm going to do some dimensioning with it. We've been messing around with like 1.5s, 1.25s, like all factors. So let's set this to 1 and kind of big, but no worries. And let's set this point to be the midpoint here. And what we can do here is dimension 1. And then another thing with dimension is, even though we know it's on this point, now we can dimension here to here. And let's just set that to like what? 1.5. Alright. And then what we can do is ensure that this is also horizontal. This, boom. And look, our crescent is now, all the lines are black, and it's pretty much centered because we have this right here. Because that's going to be kind of how it like revolves around, that's its origin. So lastly, we have our octagon. So for octagons, we have a really nice tool. That's the polygon. It has inscribed polygons and circumscribed. So inscribed, as you can tell, the lines are outside the circle. But that was the wrong button. Anyways, for this, if I get rid of this, and then I used the circumscribed, the shape is inside. So now that we've established that, we can just use either one. Let's just click, because we can just adjust the amount of sides. Click again. And what we can do, first of all, is make sure that we set the radius of this. Just make it like 0.75. And then notice how this is on the side. What we can do is we can set this horizontal, actually not horizontal, parallel. Because we can make this line parallel with this bottom line. Top, bottom. And look, now it's parallel. And now notice how it's not super centered in this quadrant. We can work on that. So what we can do by fixing that is, since we have this point, we have this point, and this is in the center. If I just line up this, the vertical and the horizontal with this, then this would be in the center. So it's vertical, horizontal, and boom. Now we have all our shapes made. And everything is clearly defined, everything's black, nothing blue. Looks great. So then we're done with that sketch. Now we're going to extrude this. We're going to make this into a 3D object. So extrude. What we're going to do first is just make the base. So it's going to be the bottom of your toy box. And hopefully the bottom of your toy box doesn't have holes in it. But let's make it thinner than that, because 1 inch is really thick for a floor. So that looks good. And check. And let's make a new extrude. Remember, same concept with the sketch. If you press check mark, you'll basically exit out of the extrude. So we want to show this sketch again because we're extruding everything from here. We want to click this outer wall. And how long we want to make this wall? Like 2 inches. We don't want it to be super long. See? That's good. And a reminder that all these values you can always mess around with. I'm just going with these because like 0.25s, everything being a factor of like 0.05 is nice, and it's a nice size. Everything matches well. It's organized. Just make sure that your values make sense. They're just not random. And so now we have the bottom and the walls of our toy box. Now we have to make the actual wall with the actual top that has the holes with it. Like if you technically had shapes, you would push them through that hole. And so now let's do our final extrude, and let's pick this and that. And so what we can do here right now is second in position. And what we can do is that we can pick up to face. We can pick up to face of this extrude. So meaning instead of extruding right here, it'll be extruding here. So in the depth, let's just go 2.125. Then check mark. Something went wrong. Okay. 2.25 to face. Line. Well, you want to make sure this is inverted so that it touches that side. Woohoo! And now you have your toolbox. And something fun you can do if you're a little bit interested in that. And generally when we actually make parts in robotics, we want to color things to be like actual polycarb or metal sheets. So if we go to the extrude and then we go add appearance, we can add colors to them. So let's go with like our spider bots colors, and then add appearance, can do green again, add appearance to feature, add a last green. And now you've got this green toolbox. And you can always mess around with colors, mess around with appearances, and you can actually even mess around with the opacity. So it should be, there we go. And you can basically see through it. We generally use this for polycarb because polycarb is a bit see-through. What? And that, you've made your toolbox.